All right, here
This is one of my favorite interviews ever.
He said it. There it is.
Cool.
Okay.
Awesome. We love you, Joel.
We do love you, Joel. Here is Joel Schumacher. The movie Trespass, his new film with Nicole Kidman and Nicolas Cage, is now open in select cities, I think 9 major cities across the country, and it's also available on video-on-demand services. Here's Joel. Because you're days away from this movie being unleashed upon the public.
Yes, unleashed is a good word.
And you've nurtured it this far. How does it feel? Does this feel like the finish line for you with this film?
Well, one of the things, I've been at this before you were born. One of the things that happens very, very early on, and I did 2 TV movies before I did my first feature, and worked on many other, directors' films, doing costumes. And I'm sure I started at $200 a week in doing costumes on an independent movie, dreaming to be a director. So how it happened, I don't know. But it sure did happen, and much bigger than my dream. But the first thing you learn on your first television movie is it's only your movie when you're making it. It is really what is considered, and this doesn't matter how artistic a film is, it's a product for a company and a corporation that expects to make money.
Right.
And, no matter how prestigious a film may be, it's a business. They want to make money. And, no matter how much rope they give us and how much they say we want you to do something completely different, at the end of the day, they would love Star Wars. You know what I mean?
Sure.
but so the hard part is, it's like, I would assume it's like when people raise other people's children. But eventually, there comes a time where you have to give the child back to, where it comes from, right?
Right.
So you learn early on it's only your movie when you're making it, and then once it's finished, or you're finishing it, it really belongs to the studio or the financiers or whoever has put the money up for the film. And
sure.
You have to learn, separation anxiety, and you have to realize you really made this to give it away. And then, of course, there's always the, what if everybody hates it? What if it, doesn't find an audience? I'm sure every director goes through that. There's certain movies you do and you expect, you do a Batman movie, you expect people to come to it.
Mm-hmm.
You do a Grisham movie, you expect some people are going to come to it. But a lot of my movies were surprise successes, and so you never know what's going to happen. And this is a tough movie for people. And I don't know. I really think success with film, I can't speak to other industries, is really being in the right place at the right time with the right movie.
Right.
And
but the thing has to be, the joy of it is in the actual doing of it.
Yes.
So
the thing that's great is making movies. That
right.
is, you're absolutely right. That is, for me, the greatest job in the world.
But most of the job
yes.
entails doing everything but making movies, trying to set it up, trying to work it out.
And it's gotten harder and harder. Even in the big studio franchises, maybe even worse there, because it's so, everyone's afraid now. And I think when you're doing the $100, $200 million movies, of course, they're even more hysterical.
But here's another new thing with this film, and it's a recent kind of phenomenon in the past year, 2 years, in that it's releasing simultaneously in select theaters and at your home through on demand. Correct?
Well, yeah, and when I first heard about that, I thought, is that a bad thing? And then I noticed now I notice commercials, and a lot of movies are doing that.
Yeah.
And some of them are going on a week ahead of time on, pay-per-view or video on demand or Netflix. They're purposely going ahead. And look, that's where we're all going, and everybody knows it. You certainly don't want a film like Batman or Phantom of the Opera or, well, no director wants any film except the way they made it, shown in a perfect theater with perfect sound.
A couple of years ago, we spoke to Paul Schrader, and he was talking about the future of films, and he said that he believes that actually going to the theater will be reserved for the theme park movies, the big event films.
Yes, you wouldn't want to see, although if that's the only way you can see it. I mean, I would have not liked to have seen Avatar without 3D and IMAX. Myself, because I also know that's the way Jim wanted us all to see it. But if people are living where there is no IMAX theater, there may not even be a 3D theater. And the only way they can get it is to order it, or pick it up at Blockbuster, or if that's still around, or get it from Netflix. Well, so be it. I mean, you want them to watch it. I always said to Andrew Lloyd Webber, let's not make fans of it, because he was always worried about the fans of the show being disappointed. Of course, who wouldn't be? But I said, but why don't we make this to the people who could never, ever get to a theater, couldn't afford it, don't live anywhere in the world where they're even near it, have heard about it, love the music, are interested in the story. Let's make it for them. Yes, when you see Phantom in the Ziegfeld Theater in New York.
Wow, yeah.
With the perfect sound and the perfect picture, you're having the experience that we wanted you to have, hopefully.
Yeah.
But if people are going to see it on if they eventually watch it on their cell phone, I made it for people to watch it. And I know there are a lot of people that are very angry, a lot of directors and actors that are very angered with the future. I've just been around so long, and you can't ever stop the tide.
No, yeah, you're right.
This is a dubious achievement, but a friend of mine who lives in Shanghai called me this summer, and Shanghai is just so corrupt in China that they don't list the top 10 films of the month. They list the top 10 pirated films.
Wow.
This is not a joke. And whether he exaggerated this or not, I don't know, but he's in the film business. He's a very serious businessman. He called me and said, all right, 12 went to Sundance and got bought right away. And the people who bought it had no money to market it or open it. So it was really a tree that fell down in the forest and no one heard it. And he said 12 is the number one most pirated film in the month of May in China.
Oh.
And you know what I thought? Well, we made it for people to see it. That's a lot of people seeing our movie.
Yeah, that is true.
Which is really why you made them, And, I hate sports metaphors, and I'm going to do one. In a way, I've always felt like the guy with the football who's got to, manipulate and run around the studios, the managers and agents, although they can be very helpful sometimes, and so can your producers, but then you have to get through the critics, and now all the haters on the blog, which no one seems to get out of this alive, and get into the stand and deliver the football, which is your movie, for them.
Yeah.
Like, this is for you. I've been pretty lucky in my career that people have seen so many of my films. And I think all these avenues that are open to people, like Netflix, like DVD, Tigerland got no release at Fox because Mr. Murdoch felt the film was anti-American and anti-war.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the truth was, it was anti the draft. But he's the boss, and those are his views. So no one saw it except in Toronto, where the critics discovered it. And then it was DVD that made Tigerland and also made Colin a Star.
Yeah.
So if there was no DVD, that definitely would be a movie that no one had ever heard of.
Well, and I recall going to the theater opening weekend to see Flawless, which I think is just a beautiful film.
Thanks.
And I'm thinking today, would that movie play in a theater in my area? But then again, it might be better for a movie of that type to be available in everyone's home on the day of release. More people are likely to see it.
Yes, and then, and maybe it's also a very intimate film, like
Yes.
Trespassers. So, it really does not need, although Trespassers shot beautifully by Andrei Barkowiak in scope.
Right.
So, you always want a scope movie to be shown in a theater. But it's an intimate film, and I think sometimes small films are enhanced by the smaller screen. Also, I'm just always going ahead. I mean, you can't look back. And I'm always telling young people, things weren't better, they were just different. This is their time, and in the movie business, this is our time. And as you say, or as Paul Schrader says, yes, the big franchises, of course we want to see them on the big screen. But I'm sure if you looked at the numbers on the DVDs, so Flawless got no real distribution because Franklin Cruz Sr., who we made the movie for, and was a great friend and fan of the film, and had greenlit it, and allowed me to get Philip Seymour Hoffman his really big first starring role.
Yeah.
He was replaced at the last second by a man named Alex Novajigian, who had run casinos for Kerkorian in Las Vegas, and knew nothing about film, and B, was I don't even know what the word is, was a fanatical homophobe, and hated the movie so much that I'm glad it opened in a theater near you. I don't know where the hell the thing opened. But it was DVD that made that movie.
Yes.
And I'm always discovering great movies on DVD.
You tell me these stories about the kind of the perils of getting your baby made and then trying to protect it after it's made, but and you've had great successes, and then you've had some films that I think you've admitted that have been compromised in this process. So
hopefully not many.
Right, but
and the ones that I really compromised the most on were Batman and Robin, as everyone knows. But I take full responsibility. I mean, people didn't hold guns to my head. At all. It was a job. We had been so successful with Batman Forever that everybody wanted a sequel right away. And, sequels, with rare exceptions, are just made for one reason, box office.
Mm-hmm.
And then, because Batman Forever was a very unexpected success, everybody climbed on. It was my job to do the best with it, and I still didn't do the best with it, and I think I never got my ass in the seat right, and it's all my fault. I think Dying Young, although I'm very proud Julia Roberts and Campbell Scott in it. I think they did a wonderful job. And Vincent D'Onofrio and Colleen Dewhurst. But I really think if I just finished Flatliners with Julia, and I was so in love with her, as everybody was, and we'd had such a wonderful working and personal relationship. And she asked, I was going off to Europe to do Phantom of the Opera originally. This is like in 98. 88 or 89 or something. And that got canceled because of the divorce. Andrew had decided to divorce Sarah Brightman, and the rights to the show got all tied up in the legal issues, so it took a few years to iron all that out. But Julia called me and said, if you're not going to do Phantom, I'm going to do this little movie. And Joe Roth, I think, was on the phone call with her. He was running Fox for Barry Diller. And, you know, I don't think I would have taken the movie if one of the other actresses at that time had asked me, because it's really not my kind of movie. And so I know a lot of people love it. I know it has a big cult following. And once they changed the name in Europe to Choice of Love and all over South America, you know, of course it did much better than the States. Good luck opening a movie called Dying Young. And there's a toe tapper. And, but, I mean, I'm proud of them, and I think I did my best, but I know in my heart of hearts I would not have done that movie if another actress had asked me to do it. Because it's really not in my blood, that kind of movie. And Julia and I saw it as a very, very, very veiled metaphor for AIDS, and we had friends, both of us, who were dying of AIDS, and you couldn't make an AIDS movie then, and, you know, and I'm sure no one else read that into it, but in our minds, we sort of saw it that way. So I mean, you know.
So when you look at Trespass, I'm so curious about the process of putting a film together and how the director views the final product, which is what you've been discussing with me today. When you look at Trespass, at the beginning of this process, your dreams for this film, how do they compare with your final cut of the film? Does anything about the final cut surprise you from your initial kind of visions of Trespass?
Well, it always was, hopefully, from the minute that the, you know, marauders break into the house, that I was hoping to keep everybody on the edge of their seat with what's happening on screen, with secrets and lies that are revealed, to just keep them in the motor of the movie from the minute they break in till the minute it ends. And because I think that's what a good thriller should do. And I've had luck with some successful thrillers. And especially this one, like Tigerland, once the fuse is lit, it's lit. And then it's what's going to happen to people in 90 minutes. And I hope I achieved that. I like to make... Do you think people who ride motorcycles really think they're hot shit? I guess so. They're noisy little buggers. And no, don't say that. I'll get like the hate mail of all time from everything. And also, I've used them very successfully in Lost Boys, so I have great homage to the motorcycle. It's just the noise in the city is funny.
No, I just love that the two times I've had the opportunity to talk to you, there's this great New York ambiance in at It's beautiful.
I know. Well, I am such a street kid and always will be, even though I'm 100 years old. You know, I'm at home when I'm on the street and in the subway. I've had many other privileges in my life, but this is really my strength.
but working in the thriller genre, I would think that it would be a very careful calibration of tension, where to ratchet up the tension and so forth. You really got to orchestrate
and then
that.
when to cool it.
Yeah.
And get a little introspective, and then just, hit you hard again.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they're not peaks and valleys, also in Falling Down and Lost Boys and Flatliners and Phone Booth and 8mm, some of my darker work.
Mm-hmm.
I've always tried to infuse a lot of dark comedy in it. And I tried to do that in this movie to give people a little bit of a relief, because I think some of the things that happen on our set are very funny.
Mm-hmm.
One case would be when Dash Mihawk gets the phone call from Mr. Big, if you will, and then in the middle of all this shitstorm, it says, "I don't know. How are things going, Elias?" And, we're all supposed to laugh at that because how's it going? And he says it very sarcastically and ironically.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. How are things going? It's like the worst fucking nightmare for all of them. And I also saw the movie, definitely as class warfare, but very much, and I don't mean to get anything too, douchebag pretentious here, but I always saw Ben Mendelsohn's family and Nick's family
Mm-hmm.
as two sides of the same coin. Basically, in the world we live in right now, there are two men who have way overreached to have the American dream.
Mm-hmm.
Basically with their families in mind. And, Nick tried to do it the legal way, and, of course, Ben tried to do it the illegal way. But they're both overextended. And, there is that moment where Nick says to Ben, "We're not the only hostages here." So they're both in a pressure cooker. Because I try to make really different films, I'm always, one of the things you get asked a lot is, well, what is a Joel Schumacher film? Like, they're all so different, Joel. And I said, well, and I can't figure it out myself. I just like to do something different. But I noticed that I do make movies about very, very flawed people,
Mm-hmm.
and then put them in a pressure cooker and see who can rise to it and who falls to it. And I didn't do that on purpose. But if I look at my films, starting, well, certainly with DC Cab, but definitely with St. Elmo's Fire and Lost Boys,
Right.
very flawed people. But I think we all are.
Yes, and that makes for good drama. That's just an essential element of good character drama.
I'm not so sure anymore, because it does seem, I think there's a trend right now to go back to black hat, white hat. Like, who's all good, who's all bad, like the cowboy movies.
Mm-hmm.
And also that maybe the audience sees something that at the end is heartwarming and uplifting. And I think a lot of my films have elements of that, but they're not, nobody's quite walking into the sunset ever.
Right.
But I think they have just endings. And then, working with the actors, as you know, when the movie begins, you have three people living three totally separate lives
Mm-hmm.
that are not connecting at all. And and they have all these problems and all these secrets and lies and fears, and Nick, of course, is hiding an enormous amount. And all of that means nothing when you're family, when you're talking about a life and death situation.
Yeah.
So
you mentioned the kind of the good white hat, the black hat, the cut and dry, good and bad. But you made two films I'm thinking of in particular that would have fit in perfectly during my favorite decade of films, where things were a lot more gray, less black and white, and that was the 70s. 8mm.
I remember, I remember when we were making 8mm. Nick said to me, after a couple of days of filming, he said, "Oh, I get it. We're making a 70s movie," which I thought was a very high compliment. But I want to assure you that these movies would not get made today.
Yeah.
Falling Down, 8mm, phone booth, unless it had a huge star in it. Certainly not with an unknown. Flatliners, although they're remaking it, but they wouldn't be remaking it if it wasn't a success. And then the great movies of the 70s, like Taxi Driver. If you think about those movies, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Imagine trying to pitch that movie in a meeting. Well, he's this kind of wacky guy, and they put him in a mental institution, and there's a lot of great guys there, and it's sort of fun, and there's a really evil nurse, and he eventually has a lobotomy, and then his best friend, who's an Indian, smothers him to death.
Mm-hmm.
It's a summer movie. and that wouldn't get made today. How about this one? A guy holds up a bank, and basically the whole city of New York, to get money for his boyfriend to have a sex change operation.
One of the great movies. Oh,
I know. I don't know if a lot of Lumet movies would be made now.
I don't think so either.
And some of the, the great Scorsese movies of the time, and Brian De Palma, and, Paul Schrader, and, we could go on and on and on and on.
But do you think if a movie like A Falling Down was released in that period of film, the 70s, do you think people would get it more than they got it when it was really? I mean, it was very popular, but do you think that people took it the right message from it?
It was split right down the middle with critics. I don't know what messages I get from my people. I know it made the cover of Newsweek as that Michael was the poster boy for the vanishing white American male. And I, looking back on it now, I realize he was really the first Tea Partier. Like, I'm out of a job. Who are these people in my country that I don't know? And where's my gun?
Hi. Can I help you?
Yes, I'd like a ham and cheese omelet or wham fries.
I'm sorry. We stopped serving breakfast, but we are on the lunch menu now.
I want breakfast.
Well, you can't have it. We're not serving it.
So you said. Is that the manager?
Yeah.
Could I speak to him, please?
Sure. Rick, there's a customer that would like to speak with you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'd like some breakfast.
We stopped serving breakfast.
I know you stopped serving breakfast, Rick. Sheila told me you stopped serving breakfast. Why am I calling you by your first names? I don't even know who you are. I still call my boss Mister. I worked for him for 7.5 years, but I walk in here all of a sudden, total stranger. I'm calling you Rick and Sheila like we're in some kind of AA meeting. I don't want to be your buddy, Rick. I just want a little breakfast.
Well, you can call me Miss Folsom if you want to.
Sheila, we stopped serving breakfast at 11:30.
Rick, have you ever heard the expression, the customer is always right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, here I am, the customer.
That's not our policy. You have to order something from the lunch menu.
I don't want lunch. I want breakfast.
Yeah, well, hey, I'm really sorry.
Yeah. Well, hey, I'm really sorry, too.
Okay, good! Get organized. Calm down. Just calm down, everybody. Sit down. Sit down over there.
There's no doubt that a lot of people see his journey as a heroic one. And that's...
I know.
Yeah.
I know, which is very strange to Michael and me. But whenever I get asked if he's the good guy or the bad guy, I always say yes.
Mm-hmm.
And no one expected people to identify with it so strongly. And, in fact, our first research screening was in Santa Monica. The head of marketing predicted we would probably have 100 walkouts, beginning when Michael started bashing the Korean grocery store that Michael Paul Chen was the owner of.
Mm-hmm.
And they cheered, which was scarier.
Mm-hmm.
And then the more he did, the more cheering there was. But this is ultimately a man who has chosen in a psychotic break to be a total anarchist. And, it's not even vigilante violence. It's just, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore.
Yes.
And it kills him. I mean, he eventually turns out to be a man who's standing at the edge of the pier with a loaded gun on his wife and ex-wife and child. Well, there's nothing heroic about that.
Mm-hmm.
Not at all. I think he's living out some fun fantasies during the film.
Yeah.
And that people go, yeah, I'd love to do that. But in the long run, it's a tragic tale of the, I wanted to make a movie about the kind of guys people see on the street and think they're nice to their mother and walk their dog and have always been very pleasant. And then to turn up one day and shoot people in McDonald's or in the post office. And then the neighbors are on television saying, oh, he was such a quiet guy. And he always said good morning. And he was so nice to his mother. And we never expected it.
Mm.
And then it's also the question, if you take an Uzi out at McDonald's to demand what you want, well, if you don't get it, you shoot? I mean, what does that mean? If you have a loaded gun and say, I want this now, and then he whips that Uzi right out of that army bag, or the bag that the gang who tried to kill him has when their car wrecks and he picks up the bag with public. The violence keeps escalating every second, but it is very funny too. Well, I haven't always been the critic's darling, and actually Falling Down is a great example because half of the critics and the media in the world thought I should be executed. And then the other half thought it was genius, which is not me alone, believe me. It was a great script with a great cast and a great cinematographer. So that's kind of fun, actually, because it actually became a big political story on all the morning news shows, on all the night news shows about the controversy, and it became cartoons in the New Yorker and all over England, and that was kind of fun to hit the zeitgeist in a way like that because it was very unexpected. And, the studio was very nervous about the film, and of course they should have been. Michael Douglas and I and the cast, being bleeding heart liberals, we were accused by Karen James in the Times of being fascist Republicans. because that's what the message was. And in France, yes, I was considered, fascist, right-wing, conservative. And but it also made the movie very popular in France. And yes, well, they always see things very, very, very politically in France. I mean, Lost Boys was the first film that I did a press junket all over the world. And to our favor, the most important French newspapers like Le Figaro and, the big-time guys, saw it as an indictment of, this was very interesting, Edward Herrmann's part as the head vampire was seen as the big people in the world who corrupt and exploit the little people. And that the whole film was a metaphor of that political statement, which I would like to take credit for, but it was not my intention. In fact, it's always interesting to talk about my past work because no one knew Lost Boys was going to be Lost Boys.
Right.
They really didn't. The studio kept saying to me, is this a comedy or a horror movie, Joel? And I kept saying yes. And they kept saying, it won't work. And I said, but it looks pretty good in the dailies, doesn't it? and we got lucky. I have to say success is luck.
Yeah.
There's a lot of luck in it, too, And so I've been lucky a lot of the times and unlucky some of the times. But who in life cannot say that? I made 26 movies. I didn't know if I'd ever make one in my entire life. And I do know that my success along the way has angered certain people, enraged them. And I guess they were hoping to stop me in some way by their outrage. But, whenever I get an opportunity to speak to them, it's just very simple. If I knew I was going to be this successful, I would have been born more talented. A journalist last week accused me of that my movies are pop. I said, do you realize you're speaking to the man who wrote Car Wash and Easy Cab? And, then I went through my movies. And I said, where was my little Italian art house film? Because I missed that era.